have a machete and know where to put it. Where do you put a machete? This is real, by the way. It's very sharp. Over there? Sure. I didn't dress up nearly as much this time because I'm trying to do a bunch of stuff today, so I didn't have time for it. We're going to talk about the second book in the Dread Nation series, which is an alternate history zombie book duology. I have a review of the first one if you're interested in checking that out. Obviously, there are going to be spoilers for the first one here in the second one, but I'm going to try to keep it somewhat spoiler-free here for the second one. I have the synopsis here on my tablet on my lap, so that's why I'm looking down, and I'll go ahead and read it for you. So the book is called Deathless Divide. After the fall of Summerland, Jane McKean hoped her life would get simpler. Get out of town, stay alive, and head west to California to find her mother. But nothing is easy when you're a girl trained in putting down the restless dead. And a devastating loss on the road to a protected village called Nicodemus has Jane questioning everything she thought she knew about surviving in the 1880s America. What's more, this safe haven is not what it appears, as Jane discovers when she sees familiar faces from Summerland amid this new society. Caught between mysteries and lies, the undead, and her own inner demons, Jane soon finds herself in a dark path of blood and violence that threatens to consume her. But she won't be alone. Catherine Devereaux never expected to be allied with Jane McKean, but after the hell she has endured, she knows friends are hard to come by, and that Jane needs her too, whether Jane wants to admit it or not. Watching Jane's back, however, is more than she bargained for, and when they both reach a breaking point, it's up to Catherine to keep hope alive, even as she begins to fear there is no happily ever after for girls like her. This is a very formulaic reading, synopsis, plot, blurb, whatever. It reads with all the beats. So-and-so never expected to. So-and-so hoped to do this, but instead this happened. It follows all of those beats so precisely that it was actually kind of hard for me to take it as seriously. I know, I'm expecting a lot from a blurb. I think personally that we should be looking for ways to make ourselves stand out instead of always just following the da-da-da-da-da-da-da, this, and this. Let's talk about The Deathless Divide. I liked the first book all right, but I had high hopes for the second because I think it scored better on Goodreads. Give me some more of that zombie goodness. I don't really reach for alternate histories very often, but this one had zombies and kick-ass black ladies. So I was like, yes. So even though I've been struggling lately to continue with series, I made it a point to try and finish this one. It is with a heavy heart that I say I was disappointed. Oof. It was an oof. Let's just get into talking about it. I kind of took notes as I was listening as best I could. First of all, I still like the two main characters. In this one, we do get dual POV between Jane and Kate, who were kind of the main characters in the previous book. But in the previous book, we only got Jane's point of view. I'm glad we got Kate. I think I'll talk a little bit more about her later, but I love her character. Both of these characters are great. Both of these main characters are so solid. I love Jane, and just like, she's so crafty. Kate has a line, Jane was plotting, and I was like, yeah, that's Jane. Jane is competent, she's confident, she's knows what's going on, she listens to herself before anyone else. I love that both of these characters are such strong and nuanced characters. So all of the chef's kiss is right away for the two lead characters. However, the first book set up for what looked like was going to be a love triangle. And this book nuked the love triangle from space. And I don't mean that it chose one over the other. It obliterated both options and left us with nothing. It was like the author was like, I don't like where this is going. And so not only did she kind of eliminate the love triangle, she lit it on fire and threw it in a ditch. And I'll be honest, the destruction of one of these characters nearly made me stop reading. This character lost so much nuance in this author's efforts to make us not like them anymore that I was just like, why am I even reading? Like, I am okay if you take a character that I was liking before and show me new things about them that make me not like them anymore, but this is ridiculous. This is like, I've never read the Court of Thorns and Roses series, but I've heard that the love interest in the first one essentially just gets reverse Uno carded in the second one, so suddenly everyone has to hate him. And that's what fucking happened in this book. This also felt like two books. I almost feel like this was going to be a trilogy and then got shortened down into a duology. Like maybe the publishers were like, we can't publish 3, we can only do 2. So as a result, we have two very different scenarios that split this book down the middle. It's pretty much exactly at the halfway point. I was this close to setting the book down. I was so bored. The characters spent the whole first half of this book in a holding pattern, while the author systematically destroyed all of the characters that I liked except for Jane and Catherine. All that the characters really do in the beginning part of the book is talk about plans that they have, talk about things they're gonna do, and then they never actually do it. Like, Jane spends a lot of time in a jail cell, and her friends are like, we're gonna break her out, this is how we need to get her out, all of the politicking and everything, and then it doesn't fucking matter, she just gets let out. None of it matters, and it was so boring. I was even getting sick of Jane, especially because in the previous book, one of the things that Jane had going on is that she knew what she was doing and no one would listen to her. In the first book, I didn't mind it so much that Jane always knew things because, like, people weren't listening to her, and it's like, will you listen to Jane? Fuck's sake. But in this one, she's always right about the zombies and their movements and everything like that, and I was like, I don't like that she's always right. She should be wrong every now and then. And like I said, at the 50% mark, we got a time jump and the book suddenly kicked into full gear into the book that it should have been all along. I would have loved to sit down with this author and work out how we could shorten up that first half, really get these characters to where she obviously wanted them all along. Jane is suddenly a mercenary. She's been separated from Catherine. It's just this huge jump, and the first half of the book is a holding pattern trying to maneuver the characters awkwardly into a place where the author can have this time jump and get them where they need to be. I was so close to DNFing, like, so close. If this book hadn't have switched when it did, I would have set it down. I've come to the conclusion that this author is no good at romances. She nuked the love triangle. In the first book, there wasn't much romance, and I was like, okay, it feels like we're maybe building up to romance in the second book. And then again, she completely and utterly destroyed the love triangle, which isn't a problem. But then she kept attempting to give Jane, like, romantic interests, and it was always so shallow, and it never felt romantic, even slightly, and I get that this isn't a romance book, but even books that aren't romances can at least make you believe that two characters, I don't know, like each other, but this one is just like, oh, I think Jane should have a girlfriend now. She has one. Thank you. I wonder if this author is asexual. I don't know. I don't need to research and find out, but I get that vibe. If the author of this book is watching this, Ace to Ace. Are you Ace? So in the second half of this book, Jane goes into full driven vengeance revenge mode. And if you're familiar with that type of character, she is that. She's gone sort of zombie John Wick. She's out here, she's killing, she's being a vigilante. But honestly, that made her a little bit less engaging. It's really weird. This is a weird phenomenon that I don't think I've ever encountered before, where a character started to have more agency and they became less interesting. In the first book, because of her status, Jane was just sort of carried along. Other people decided where she would go and what she would do. But because she was so rebellious and smart, it was still fun to follow her because, like, even if she was being carried along with other people wanted, she was hating it the whole time, and you were hating it with her. And so that was still interesting to read. But once Jane is on her own and doing her own thing, and she's, like, on this vengeance quest, she became less interesting somehow. She also has that cliche of, we're going to show that a character is mentally unstable by having them see the ghost of someone who's died. That's a trope that's getting pretty old. So many movies especially have done that. But let's talk about Kate. Kate is my new love. First of all, Kate is an on-the-page asexual, and I think it's done so well, which is another reason I think that this author might be ace on the ace spectrum. Hit me up, fam. But if you are looking for a great asexual character who is in this book, she gets to be a viewpoint character, so she's a main character. In the previous book, I was like, oh, aces were so close to getting to be a main character. We get to be the plucky sidekick, but now she's a main character, and I was like, hi, Kate. Kate, I love you. I love you. She is more feminine. Jane is like the tomboyish one who kills all the bad guys, and Kate is more feminine. She likes to wear pretty dresses. She likes to wear a corset, but also she will fuck you up with weapons because she was also trained to kill zombies, and I love her. The way that she deals with the world is complex and nuanced and just like chef's kisses for Kate. I wish I could give this book a higher score just because of Kate. Kate has PTSD and she has anxiety, and I love this detail. because it's true. Kate likes to wear corsets. You know, I talked about the corset hate in the previous book, but that's because it was Jane's point of view and Jane doesn't like corsets. Kate likes to wear a corset because she finds them reassuring, and she doesn't tight lace them because that makes her unable to move, and that rigidity to be reassuring for her anxiety, and when she's not wearing one, she feels a little bit untethered. And I'm like, yes. Many corset wearers have talked about how putting on the corset makes them feel like they're putting on armor, putting on a shield. And this author captured that so well. Now, corseting can cause anxiety in some people, but in other people, it makes them feel protected, and that was done very well. Again, on the subject of Kate, there is a female bromance in this book, female-female bromance. Jane and Kate, they're so good. Their friendship is so good. I love the dynamic and how they play off of each other. Character writer to character writer, this author had a great handle on writing these two characters specifically. Unfortunately, side characters suffered for it. I feel like I'm praising this book to the heavens, and that's because of these characters. These two characters specifically. Unfortunately, the plot, a little bit more of a problem. I'll talk about that in a second too. I just want to say that there is a dog in this book. He doesn't do much, but he also doesn't die. So yes, this book plays a little bit with what I like to do in some of my zombie stories, which you can check out on Wattpad, which is create a world where animals are useful in a zombie apocalypse. I have a couple of stories like that. I have The Gun Horse, which is a story about a horse and a dog in the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, and then I have Sacred Heart, which is a collection of short stories. There's only 3, but I call that a collection, in a world where animals have been trained specifically to be useful in the zombie apocalypse. Links down below to my Wattpad, because I get awfully sick of all of the stories being like, animals are a useless liability in the zombie apocalypse, and I'm like, they don't have to be. They don't have to be. Okay, the baddie. The baddie. Oh, there was so much opportunity for a lot more nuance with this baddie, but I don't know, the author kind of dropped the ball. She fumbled, she landed on her face with this guy. With the way that this character was started out in the first book, I was really expecting a lot more nuance from him, and instead, he almost seemed like he wasn't the same person as in the first book. Like, he had some kind of weird transformation in between books, and this is a different guy who happens to look the same. I was really disappointed in that. He just is kind of evil, and there's no two ways about it. And I do understand what the author is doing with this. There are a lot of themes in this book that tie into themes of blackness. What little bit I know about it, again, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I'm incredibly white. But there's a big theme of experimentation on Black people in this story, and that is a thing that has happened in real life. Black people have been experimented on, and so I know that the author was trying to do something with this and say something with this, and I wasn't oblivious to it, but I really wish that she had been able to really get the nuance with this character. She didn't have to make him a good guy, she didn't have to make him likable, but I wish that she had made him nuanced as a villain. You guys know that I don't need a villain to have a redemption arc. I didn't need him to be redeemed, but I did need him to feel less like he was just evil and only evil, mwahaha, and like he actually had some qualities. Especially since I know that this author can do nuanced characters and does so well with the two leads, that she kept dropping the ball with the bad guy over and over again. It was really disappointing. I'm just going to read you what I wrote. This author is good at characters, like properly good. Unfortunately, I would totally rework and restructure the plot. Character arcs were rushed or random, the first half was a drag, cool sounding things were skipped, just not good, in my opinion. If this book had been able to pull off having a solid plot and solid pacing, it would have been so amazing. I would have forgiven the issue of the not nuanced bad guy. It suffered from the same problem as the first book, where you're like, what is the plot? What is the overall plot? It did a little bit better. At least the characters have clearer goals. Like, Jane wants to get to where her mother is, but we lose it so often. And there were not nearly enough zombie attacks in this book to distract me. In the previous book, anytime I was like, okay, the plot's starting to drag, all of a sudden there'd be zombies, and I'd be like, yeah, let's kill some zombies. But in this one, there were much fewer zombie attacks, and that left me mired in the plot, such as it was. I also wanted to say that this was a very Black-centric story, which I don't have a problem with. That's the story the author wanted to tell, and that's fine. However, if you're also hoping for anything from like other ethnicities, because we do deal with Mexican characters, we do deal with Native characters, you don't get much from them. And also there's some Chinese background characters who don't get great treatment, so this book is incredibly like Black-centric, and I don't have a problem with it, but I do wish, like, I wanted to know more about what the Native Americans were doing in this alternate history, but we only get one Native American character, and he's kind of all over the place. Like, I get he's supposed to be mercenary, but sometimes I just wonder, like, what? And finally, the ending, the whole, like, especially the winding down after the climax, it felt very rushed. It did feel in character, I will say that, it felt in character, but it also felt rushed. So that's basically where I'm at. I wanted to love this book, and the two main characters are great. And the ace rep, read this book for the ace rep. I just couldn't give it any more than a 2-star, and that made me really sad. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this book review. Maybe enjoyed is a strong word, but I hope you found this book review helpful. If you would like to read something from me that doesn't involve zombies, you can check out The Wolf and the Hawk, my fantasy romance. It's a romance with a plot, so if you like a little kissing and a little killing, it might be the book for you. And I am currently working on the sequel, so you know there's going to be more. So just, you know, check it out. And if you want to help me self-publish my books, you can support me over on Patreon, where all your donations go towards helping me do that thing I just mentioned. The whole, you know, the self-publishing thing. If you have any questions, concerns, etc., all the links to my social media are in the doobly-doo for ease of your clicking. And I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Maybe killing zombies. Bye!
And 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and... Oh hey, I've been working out my muscles because I have got a lot of patrons to read, and it's gonna take me all my energy. Let's go! We've got Steve, Puppet Master, Rainfall, Kit, Hidden Glade, Persephone, Light Julie, OS, Anna, Belle, Patrick, Anne Sophie, Callison, Ray, Artemis, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, Sarah, and Lennox. Whew! That was a workout, but I made it through. And you can bet that you have never heard of a better group of patrons in your entire life. You haven't. You just haven't. It's impossible. They say I'm a dangerous man. Better run fast as you can. Don't you look back. Every bone in my body's bad. Fire burning, the skies are turning black. They say I'm a dangerous man. Oh, oh.